host, Heather White, and it is my mission to bring you stories and lessons from some of the most incredible entrepreneurs, and today is certainly no exception to that. As an entrepreneur myself, I've done my best to prepare questions that I think you're going to want to most know the answers to. But the coolest thing about EntrepreneursTV.com is that we are live. So wherever you're watching this episode from, please feel free to either tweet your questions of my guests in or submit them via the chat box, and I will ask them of my guests for you live on the air, which is very cool. Today, we are in for a treat. We've got a double dose of entrepreneurship. We've got Jenna Herbut, the co-creator of Make It, the handmade revolution, and Zoe Pawlak, a contemporary artist based in Vancouver. Ladies, I'm so excited for you both to be here. Two of my favorite people. So I just, for a chance to the audience to get up to speed in terms of the story. Jenna, I was hoping to start with you. Sure. Take us back to Booty Belts and sort of fast forward us here to Make It and to what you are doing now.
Definitely. Well, Booty Belts started about 10 years ago now. I can't believe it. It's gone by so fast.
Oh my God.
So I was in university studying business at the U of A, and I had to do a business project for one of my marketing classes. So I came up with the idea for Booty Belts. In my 21-year-old mind, it was like the coolest name ever because like Beyonce and Shakira are really hot, and I thought, Booty Belts, it's this brand that everyone's going to have on the tip of their tongues, and I just started writing this plan, and I got so enthralled. I'd always loved fashion, but I didn't really know anything about it, so it was a great learning experience in knowing what it takes to really create a fashion business. And after I wrote this plan and submitted it, I don't even know if I got the best grade on it. I think I got like a B, which I was kind of upset about because I put so much passion and energy, and I couldn't stop thinking about this booty belt idea. So for my last co-op work term, I actually started my own business, which I don't think had ever been done before because the whole purpose is to get work experience, and here I started my own company. But it was super cool, and I just started making these booty belts, which were essentially scarves that I attached buckles to, and then as I got more and more into it, I'd buy fabric and create these things. And I knew nothing about sewing, so the first few attempts involved a lot of glue, a lot of hot glue gunning, and because it seemed easier than sewing, you know? And I just was so excited about this idea and started pounding the pavement, and living in Edmonton at the time, I would go up and down White Ave and all the trendy areas. And sure enough, I think it was probably my enthusiasm and just my belief in this product. The store started carrying them. And after a while, I just couldn't make all these booty belts myself. So I got some home sewers, mostly stay-at-home moms that would make them for me in their homes. And then I would go on little road trips to Calgary and then Vancouver and then Toronto. So within about 6 months, I had about 25, 30 stores carrying my booty belts. And, I was like 22, 23, and it was so exciting. And then I decided to sign up for the Magic Apparel Show in Las Vegas, and it's the biggest apparel show in the world. There's something like, I don't even want to take a guess, but there's like thousands of booths, and celebrities have booths there, and it's crazy, and it costs like, I think, $6,000 just for a booth. Wow. And then I brought my younger brother Chandler along, and so it's about a $10,000 investment. And everyone was like, you're so crazy, like just sell to more stores in Canada. But I just had a go big or go home mentality. So I did this magic show and made Chandler wear a booty belt t-shirt that said, shake it up on the back. He wore it for one day and he's like, I am not wearing this shirt. I'm like, it's part of the branding, you have to. And, first couple of days sitting in this booth, having invested so much money, no sales, and I just felt so defeated, and I thought, oh my God, this is the biggest mistake of my life. It's so dramatic too at the time when my mom would call and we would like ignore her calls because I know my mom would be like,
didn't want to tell her.
How'd it go? And then the third and fourth day got a couple smaller orders, and then a department store from Japan actually visited the booth, and I was outside probably crying in the bathroom, but my brother spoke to them and they were very interested. And a couple weeks later, placed an order for 60 of their stores.
Wow.
So, needless to say, it was about a $10,000, $12,000 order.
Wow.
So I just felt so blessed. And I felt like it was almost a sign. And then from there, I really leveraged that experience and was able to get into even more stores. And so probably in the first 2-3 years, I was selling in about 120 stores. And it was really exciting, and I was having a blast. But then I started to get very exhausted, so much traveling, and then with fashion, it's so fickle. Like I had expanded to a line of handbags, but still, it was just getting harder and harder to sell my stuff. I think the initial hype, and it's also the style. So on a whim, a friend of mine was selling at a street festival and asked me if I wanted to sell some of my excess stock. And I thought, oh, I don't know if that's on par with my brand. I don't know, a street festival? Like I was selling at some pretty higher end stores, and I did it, and it was a blast. And I just became a festival craft show junkie, and I would do every single show and event I could, schlepping my booty belts around the country. And I just loved it because you were selling to the end customer, and it was exciting, and you felt the love. And that led me into creating my own show because, you know, back 5 years ago, the craft show scene wasn't what it is today. Etsy was just emerging on the scene, and I was sort of following what was going on in New York, and I just saw this opportunity. I was around 26 at the time, and I thought, you know, if you have booze and music, like people my age are going to want to come to this thing, and guys are going to want to come. So that's exactly what we did. We had bands perform, DJs, had a bar, and first show, 25 designers, mostly peers, and it just kind of exploded from there. So now, 5 years later, my brother, the one that wore the Shake It Up Booty Belt t-shirt, he's now my business partner, and we do Make It twice a year in Vancouver and Edmonton, and yeah, it's been amazing, and it's so much fun. The show's expanded, so now we have about 160 designers, and it's application time right now, so you know, we probably have double the applications in what we can accept. So,
wow,
it's exciting. Yeah,
very exciting, very exciting. And we're going to dig a lot more into it. But I want to give you a chance, Zoe, to tell us a little bit about your story. So, you graduate in fine arts.
Yeah.
You study painting. You're a painter. And how do you get from that moment to what you've created today?
So yeah, I went to university in Canada, and I always wanted to have my exhibitions. So whenever I would make work, I would come home on Christmas break or summer break, and I would put on shows. And I think it's really easy as a painter. You make something and then you put on an exhibition. So I had a very early experience with what it means to bring something outside of yourself and actually see it come to fruition and then actually sell it. So I started having these shows, and they started going really well. And when I graduated school, we had our children really early, and so I had this really early feeling about wanting to make a living out of this. And I saw a lot of my peers having to choose to have jobs, I guess, and still have jobs, people who are artists, and I just didn't really believe that was going to be my future. And so my last job was waitressing, and I was 7.5 months pregnant. And I remember that my customers started taking their food in their empty plates back into the kitchen themselves because they felt so bad for me because I was so massive. And you know, finally I went in one day, and my boss said, you should go home now. And I was like, okay. So I went home, and we had our kids, and I was just really determined. So when my daughter would go to sleep, I would get on the internet, and I started learning about blogs and the power of blogs. And it's the same thing. It was about 2005, 2006. It was still early days for all of this stuff. Things have gone so quickly. And I submitted my work to blogs every night, or galleries, or whatever I could. I would creep on other people's CVs, other artists that I admired, and I would just copy what they were doing. And it was really sort of a nighttime or spare time thing that I was doing, but I was painting all the time. I had a studio behind my house. And so I like to say that I was ready. You know, when opportunity, I always had this feeling like if something comes up, I'm ready. And so, yeah, I got onto Design Sponge, which was a really big, it was really a big deal at the time, and it gained me a lot of exposure. I sold 23 paintings in 3 days. So our house was like FedEx. It was so funny. We were wrapping things, and people were asking, "Can you ship to Japan?" And I was like, yeah, totally. I had no idea how to do any of those things. And same thing, you know, how do you take a payment from different places in the world? And all of these things I learned just by doing. And it really gave me a sense that I could do it, and that was really exciting. And from that, I got a large commission in San Francisco with my first interior designer. So I thought, oh, interior designers, they are in a lot of homes and there's a lot of walls and they need art. So I started, again, I just started searching every interior designer in Vancouver. I started writing them letters and introducing my work. And I really had no sort of other authority or previous work experience. I just sort of was determined. And now I see how, like 3 or 4 years later, I'm actually doing the job that I said, that I sort of created for myself from those experiences. But that experience of being on Design Sponge gave me the professional confidence and then the little boost of money to think, oh my gosh, maybe I can really do this. So that was sort of the beginning. And then I kept painting and moved into the city, and that was a big change for me because I saw my larger community. I worked on the Cheaper show. I started the artist series, so I worked with Lululemon in their window. I put up a bunch of artists and curated some shows, curated a show at Catalog. So I started to kind of engage with my larger community instead of being this isolated person who was sort of raising babies and working through my studio and through the computer. I started really finding my people, finding my peers. Started Loaded Bow, which is the group that I run for female entrepreneurs, and that started really giving me lots more energy, lots more focus, and just a community of real people who give back to me and that I was able to contribute to as well. So,
do you know what just strikes me so much listening to both of you is this idea that you both just did it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You just did it.
You kind of have to.
And I know you sitting perhaps in your own shoes feel like, well, yeah, that's kind of just what you do. But I know there is this sense of paralyzation that can take over an entrepreneur when they start recognizing the things they don't know. Both of you, I just have this sense, you dove in, you started to act, action and fear can't really coexist, although I'm sure there was moments of, yes?
Yeah,
extreme
fear.
Yeah. And so, but you kept acting and, the world kept opening up and allowing you to share more and more of yourself.
Yeah.
And there's just something so really important, I think, for entrepreneurs to hear in that. It's simple, act. It's not always easy.
Because you never totally know what you're doing. I mean, if you knew all the steps, if everyone had access to that, then everyone would be running their own business. But you never know, but you just figure it out. And it's amazing how opportunity, the more actions you take forward, the more opportunities just naturally present themselves. It can be really magical in that sense.
But you create the opportunity by taking the step.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, which is just, it just really strikes me about both of you. Now, there's been moments of fear, yes?
Yeah.
A little bit?
Hell yeah.
Talk a little bit. Talk a little bit about that.
Moments.
Daily moments.
Days or weeks or months.
Talk a little bit about, in your own individual experiences, how do you work through it? What's your process? Do you surrender to it? Do you call a mentor? Like, what do you do?
I think it depends on what exactly it is, but the fear thing, it can be difficult because there is so much uncertainty, and you think, well, if I do this, then maybe I'll miss this other opportunity, or maybe it won't work out and I'll look like a big fat failure. But what I've sort of learned in my, 10 years being an entrepreneur is even if something doesn't work out, it's never really this massive blowout failure that everyone's going to point a finger and laugh at you. Usually people don't even notice, and it's a learning experience. I think failure has such a negative ring to it, and I think it's all just about learning, and you really can't go wrong. And if you embrace that, I'm glossing over a lot, it's easier said than done, but if you really accept that you can't fail, because if it doesn't go exactly as planned, you're going to learn this other amazing, valuable lesson, and maybe experience this opportunity you never would have otherwise. So I think if you have that attitude, it definitely helps the blow if maybe something doesn't go quite right.
Awesome.
I think that's like a shift in perspectives, and I say multiple perspectives, and it's also, I think, what other people might perceive as a failure, like you said, isn't necessarily if your mind is in a different place. And also I think surrounding yourselves with the right people who can train you how to do that and teach you those skills. So I think calling a mentor, really reaching out for help, because a lot of us are really single-minded or control freaks or really focused or whatever we are. There's a lot of characteristics that are common amongst entrepreneurs, and I think reaching out for help in a very real way. I think getting things outside of yourself. So as an artist, or if you're a writer or a singer, I mean, you can't just keep the songs inside your head. So when you said working through the process, that is getting all of the stuff outside of you. And like you're saying, I think a lot of us are doers. So if we do something and it doesn't work out, it's faster if we just do it and then move on to the next best thing. So that is a huge part of what I see in a lot of the sort of more successful entrepreneurs that I hang out with. That we get a lot of stuff out, do it, move on, and kind of and like you said, a lot of people don't know about the things that you failed at, so it's like
I know.
They think it's on purpose.
Yeah.
You totally tried to do that. And I think it's also like, taking action is the thing that you need to do, because as soon as you wait for everything to be perfect, like you spend $10,000 on a website because you want it to be absolutely amazing. Like if I look back to my first website, it looked like a kindergarten kid did it. Like it was, and my first booty belt, like I said, I used glue gun. But, I had to get something out there. And I think the more you push forward, the more you're going to learn and the faster the trajectory. And I think it's just having the confidence, and like Zoe mentioned, surrounding yourself with like-minded people is so crucial.
Let's talk a little bit about the inner confidence and the inner game that an entrepreneur needs to really hone. We don't come out of the gates necessarily full of confidence and I know everything. And Zoe, you have an amazing story that you guys talk about failure not being failure but being a lesson. So you paint this painting.
So in about 2006 I made a painting, and it was the first abstract painting that I'd ever made. And abstract painting, I revere it. It's incredibly difficult. People think it's often the easiest type of painting, but I think it's very difficult. So I made this painting, and a friend came over and visited the studio, and I rarely let people in the early days, and now I've learned that it's a rule, or I don't ask opinions about early work. And she said, I don't know, it looks kind of angry. And so that stayed with me, and then later that evening I went out into my studio and I painted over it. I had photographed it, but I painted over it. And then I've since had 16 people ask for that painting. So that to me was a huge lesson in terms of not letting other people influence things that you're doing, especially in the early days. When you're more established in something and you can handle it, you're like, the booty belts are rocking. Like, don't get into my you're sort of on a trajectory or in a forward movement. But in early days, you're vulnerable, and I think it's very important to trust yourself, especially in those times. And I always say about that story that I think you have to practice listening to your heart in the small things, because when the big things come up, you really have to be sure that you know what your heart is saying, so that you're confident in that. And that's only through training, that's only through experience, that's only through making those kinds of mistakes that you look back and you go, I wish I hadn't done that, but you wouldn't know what you know now. But I think that one of the hardest things about being an entrepreneur is all of the insecurities that it's shown me. Like, I could hide away from that a lot easier if I had a regular job. So it's a lot of self-work to get to that, and it's a lot of kind of vulnerability, and then working on yourself.
I mean, to me, entrepreneurship is the ultimate call to or the answer to the call of, like, why are we here?
Yeah,
it's like, because you talk about vulnerability, and I think it's just so important. No matter what you're creating as an entrepreneur, we're creating something. We're bringing something to the world that wasn't here before. We've thought of another way, or we're bringing something that we think is going to add value, or we're being called from something else within us to say, here it is. Yeah. And that is vulnerable. That is incredibly vulnerable. And I think there's some really great learnings for all of us to hear in that story. There's something to be said for being able to receive the opinions of others, but not allow it to shape our opinion of ourselves or our art or our what we've created. And what you're talking about in terms of honing that inner relationship with self, with heart, with soul, so that when these sort of grandiose criticisms or sometimes even attacks on our creative expression in life come, we can go to that place where we know where our intention was, we know where we were coming from when we created it, and we can remain detached from the praise that we often get, and we can also stay detached from the criticism or the commentary that we might get.
I think in the early days, the praise is, well, for me, it was really driving. Like, that's what meant something was working. And now now that I'm only 4 or 5 years in full time and you 10 years, but it's like now you're in a different phase of the praise doesn't always mean that you're moving in the right direction, right? These outside sources that are telling you, well, that looks good, that looks like fun, looks like you're doing great. And you're like, oh, well.
Well, in a way, if you go down that path where you allow the praise to drive you, when you get a blow like this, it's like building a foundation on sand, right? Like,
it derails you
gone.
so easily.
Yeah, it's all about how it resonates in your heart. And I've gotten really good. I've simplified it, the yes feeling and the no feeling. And I'm really, really good at picking up on it. It's taken a lot of time to kind of hone in on what exactly it feels like. But if someone asks me to do something, I know probably within the first couple seconds if it's a yes or if it's a no. And it's acknowledging that. And I think that's something, and it's hard when you get all these opportunities and you're new and you think, oh, yes, 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 and you're saying yes to everything. But if you start to feel that icky kind of, sort of like a sticky, dark feeling in your stomach and kind of in your chest, that's what I would describe as a no. And the light kind of fluffy, like sparkly feeling, that's a yes. And just getting really good at acknowledging either and not taking action based on, oh, well, I don't want to hurt that person's feeling. Like, oh, maybe it is kind of an angry painting, I should. But it's just tapping into that. And if it doesn't come right away, don't get discouraged because it takes years of training. And I think it's also, again, surrounding yourself with people who you trust and who are encouraging you for the right reasons and not, because when you are doing something on your own and you surround yourself with people who maybe all have 9-to-5 jobs, they're lovely people and they can be your really good friends, but it's a whole different frame of reference. And it's amazing. Like, I just find like now pretty much all my close friends are entrepreneurs. And I think it's just because the like-mindedness is so important for us.
Yeah, a real level of sort of understanding and a lot of compassion we have for each other because we know what we go through. We know what we go through. Talk a little bit about saying no.
Well, I think, like I said, as you move forward, people are going to ask you to do different things. And I think you just have to take a very truthful evaluation of what your schedule looks like and what you have going on. And you have to be selfish. Like, what is this going to give you? Is this going to help you move forward in doing exactly what you want to do? Or is this going to help the other person and maybe put you back because you can't do what you want to do? So I think it's sort of, you have to think about what the final outcome will be. And if you just think this person's rad and you love their style, maybe it is worth putting all this time and effort just to work with them. And it doesn't always have to be opportunistic, and it's not anything like that, but it's, again, what is this going to bring to the table for you, and is it worth it? Because time is our most valuable asset. I know we've probably all said, like, I just wish I could clone myself, like I have a whole army drones of Jenna just doing all these different things for me, but the truth of the matter is we only have ourselves, so our time is our most valuable asset.
Yes. Yeah. How's it been for you saying no?
I'm learning it now. It's much better. And you just take on too much in the early days.
Yeah.
And I think it's that entrepreneurial people are very inquisitive and curious. So for me, it was often that the curiosity could bring about something. And so it was the possibility or the chance. And also just having to financially make yourself make money in the early days. You have to say yes to a lot of things. And I've done it. And you slowly have to pick and choose, right? And I think you've taught me this too and brought it up to my attention is making space for the good things to come in too. If you're full up, if your schedule is full up of other things, no matter if they're great or not, if you have no space, then nothing fabulous can come in. So that's the miracle.
It's so true,
and
it also requires a lot of faith too, right? Because for us to just create space and sit in that place, is that's where we hear the voice of our insecurity. And that's also where we hear the voice of our muse or our creative place, right? And it does require a lot of confidence. And I mean, let's speak pragmatically. Yes, in the early days, sometimes you got to just pay the bills. And we learn as humans through contrast, right? We say yes, 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 yes. And then we do what you're talking about, Jenna, which is that, is this really a yes or is this a no? And like
it's one or the other.
It's really,
it's not a maybe. If it's a maybe, it's a no.
It's a no.
No room for maybe.
And it's so true. And you know, another no is good enough.
Yeah.
Settling, tolerating a non-yes is a no. It needs to be a no. But you know, for myself, this has been a real struggle to have the confidence in the moment to say no, to find the words to be able to say no from a place of love and truth and a true owning of the feeling that I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. And I think a lot of us kind of struggle with that. And then when we do it, we're so rewarded. We're so rewarded, whether you want to call it universe, whatever, but it's like, as soon as you start standing in your truth and your authentic power, something like crazy starts happening.
Absolutely, and I just want to pick up on your point about, you know, you don't want to let someone down, but if you're not fully present, you're going to let them down anyways, and it's so much worse. It's a lose-lose. Like, it has to be a win-win or it's a lose-lose.
It's so true. I know. I mean,
I like it simple.
It's funny. They say we'll teach what we most want to learn, right? And I mean, I tell people this all the time, but I think again, it's because it's something I really want to learn for myself. Would you really want somebody to show up and help you move and put all their energy all over your stuff if they didn't want to be there?
Yeah. Well, maybe, because moving really sucks.
No, you gotta hire somebody, right? You gotta hire somebody, and this is part of it, right? And just if we all told the truth, the world would really be a better place if we all came from that, you know. And I think entrepreneurship, it's like we up the level of the bar for both our willingness, our desire, and also our challenge in being able to do that, being able to tell the truth. So talk a little bit about branding. What do you, like, because, you know, you're entrepreneurs, you guys have done, I said I wanted to debunk the starving artist myth here today, which I did. I really did, because here are two women that sit in front of me who are successful in all kinds of different facets within the entrepreneurial journey, but creative people. So talk a little bit about branding, what it means to you, how you've embodied it in terms of growing your businesses to the place that they're at today.
I think branding, because I came from a marketing background and it's very technical, and branding's your logo and it says, but branding's everything. Branding's your personality. And if your brand is not synonymous with you, if you're sort of a hippie, free spirit and you try to have this very classical, very stoic brand, it is not going to work. It doesn't matter how hard you freaking try. Like, you cannot disguise yourself behind a brand. And a brand, it's everything that you are naturally. And if you fight against that, it's a losing battle. Like, it's such a nice flow, because I think, like, you know, for my booty belt brand, and that's why later on I was like, oh, I do not want to be known as a booty girl anymore. Because you can imagine, oh, are you the booty call girl? And like, you know, I was done. But when I was young, in my early 20s, it was like so me, and I loved it, and everything was pink and sparkly. And now with my Make It brand, I feel like it's a little more sophisticated, and it feels like, you know, 31-year-old Jenna, and it feels right. And I think you just have to evolve your brand as you evolve. And if you try and fight against it, like I said, it just won't work.
Yes, beautiful advice.
I liked what you said about early days of websites too, because you know, there's early days, and then there's, you know, recently I just had the great privilege of getting to hire for branding, and got to hire somebody to make my logo, and it was a real treat. And a real process, and it was very different from, you know, Googling whatever free web template you can find, or getting your friend's friend to make you a website, and throwing things together in that sense. And I think there's something very valuable in the early days of just making it, just putting it out there, get the website up, print off some business cards, you know, print off stuff, get it in the mail, do that kind of thing, and just making it happen. But yeah, brand is interesting. Having hired someone, I hired Glassford and Walker, and going through that process with them of, what do I want this to look like? How can I grow this brand and grow it into the future if I'm going to have, you know, multiple facets to my business and different things like that. So having outside influence was an interesting process.
one you would do again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's almost like getting your nails done. You can do your own nails and it looks okay, but when you get it done right,
it's a whole...
you know, it's so nice because sometimes someone can pick up things that you don't even necessarily know about yourself.
Yeah,
So
I think
having
there's
that outside
absolutely
influence.
something to be said for that, for having somebody there to sort of mirror the things in you that you're most wanting to say. Again, a really close personal struggle with just with this whole concept of what do you do?
Yeah.
You know, what do you do?
Yeah.
It's such an off-putting question, but it's so necessary for us to have some understanding of our answer. And you know, I've really struggled with it, but also working with outside influence around the whole idea of a brand and what it is. And I loved what you said, Jenna, about it being this extension of you, because I feel very resonant with that comment. Especially as entrepreneurs that are growing within our businesses and really are our businesses. Because, of course, the whole world is dynamic. We're changing, we're growing. That's the whole idea. Or we're dying, but that's another conversation. So to be able to also see that your brand will grow and evolve along with you. And I think there's something really important to be said about not being afraid to change.
No.
Not being afraid to change it. Or like when it feels like a no to you, that's when it's time to start the process.
And I think branding has changed so much, even from when I was in school. Like you're taught like this very formal way of branding, but now infusing a realness and infusing personality. And it feels like all these big companies, they're going guerrilla and they're all up on social media, and that's something that we have access to, and it's free and it's so easy. But one thing I'll also say to branding, consistency is so key. Like, if anything, if it's not consistent, it doesn't matter how good this certain area is. And that's why sometimes it can be good to hire someone, because they can have this holistic approach to your branding. Because sometimes when you're a newbie, I think there's certain advantages because you're very tenacious and you have all this enthusiasm and gumption and you have this passion thriving within you. But getting the consistency down, and you don't even have to have a lot of resources to do that. That's the surprising thing. Like, you just have to have the belief, and I think you have to have the bigger vision. And just getting really clear, just writing things down, and just constantly going into your mind and seeing what it all looks like. Because for any of my business ventures, I always see it. I can like actually see it in my brain. And then from there, I kind of reverse engineer, like, okay, well, this is what I need to do on a daily basis to eventually get to this point. So,
And just use one font on your poster card.
Not 5?
No, just one. And no italics, no bold. Just keep
one
it.
font.
You know, that's all.
Entrepreneur, highlighted, bolded, underlined, italics. Consistency is actually a really good point. And I agree with what you're saying with sometimes getting that outside influence to see the holistic. And sometimes we're so in it from our point of view that we forget that there is a customer here.
That's what
and
I really
putting
like.
yourself in their shoes and their point of view, and what is their experience of you, of your business, of your brand. You know?
I think that's been a really interesting thing for me as I've moved into a more of a luxury market. That kind of just creeped up on me because my paintings became more expensive. And so every year I host a dinner for my collectors. And so, you know, a lot of them are peers or sort of average people, you might say. But a lot of my peers, I started realizing, oh my gosh, or a lot of my clients and customers are multimillionaires. And I am not my own target market. I cannot even, wouldn't or can't or don't afford to buy my own paintings. So I can't see through the eyes of my target market or my client, right? And so I can see all of their heart. They're all amazing people, and they're all connected to me usually in some way, and so forth. But in having grown, I've really grown out of having been what I would say was my target market. So hiring for my brand, when I had somebody else write my copy, you know, in consultation with me, of course, and we brainstormed that together, and that was a really authentic thing. But having them write it in a way that was framed for my client and that was still true to me, was writing my copy and taking photos of me. Jamie Mann took photos of me. So people seeing you from the outside and being able to project it and sort of say, this is the pieces and this is how it all fits together is such a relief. And also what you were saying about hiring people for what they truly are good at too. So really, like, the writer that I hired is a writer. I mean, I'm not a writer or a photographer or any of those things. So really honoring their skills and getting to collaborate, what a privilege. You know, it's great.
Totally.
Yeah.
You guys are both hustlers.
You gotta be.
Yeah.
I mean, real hustlers. Talk of, and I mean that with love. I mean that with,
Is there another kind?
the ultimate respect, the ultimate bow to you, and to everybody that takes their thing, whatever it is that they're bringing out, and even with their fear, and even with their insecurity, and even with their vulnerability, hustles the shit out of it and says, here's the thing, and I need to let you know that it's here, because I really believe that you're going to see the value in it and want to engage with me. Talk a little bit about your philosophy of hustling.
The philosophy of hustling.
Starts with the booty belt.
Well, I think it's just having 100% belief in yourself. And I know that sounds like a very simplistic frame of mind, but it's amazing once the belief starts to skew how everything, now that I know we can say shit, everything else falls to shit. And it's true. And as soon as, like for my booty belt example, as soon as I stopped sort of believing and I felt kind of ashamed about my branding, I couldn't sell them. And it was like a light switch. And you know, even like with Make It, like I believe in it so much, and I recently launched Make It University, which is online business courses for creative entrepreneurs. But I believe in it so strongly because I know there's such value in learning marketing skills and learning business skills, and it's going to make all the difference in your life. And if you don't have that belief, you can't hustle, because then it's fake hustling, and then you're just a cheesy hustler, and people are going to see through it. Like everything you do is so transparent, and it's amazing how even if you think you're really good at faking things and you're a great actress, no, it just energetically won't fly. You need to stand on the firm ground and say, this is what I have and this is what I believe in, and the rest kind of takes care of itself.
I sort of had a different experience. My experience didn't always come from confidence in myself. It came a lot from looking at what kind of art are people buying on their walls? Where is that art coming from? Why are they shopping through a gallery? These people want to buy a piece of art that's connected to somebody that they know, usually like a story, or people buy things when they're traveling or so on. And I was like, I'm that person. I feel this sort of, not a need, but this kind of void. And it hadn't, I really felt early on that my job hadn't been created yet. And in Vancouver, there's only a few of us that I know of that specialize in custom pieces in people's homes. And so when I read the book Hug Your Customer and a couple other books like that, I really saw the way that I could provide customer service to my clients and really have that have me go into their home and measure out their walls and teach them about what kind of painting would look great. And so specializing in custom work, though it came later, it was an idea that I had really early on. And a lot of interior designers that I work with now are like, this is amazing. I can't, like, if you need a 4 foot by 4 foot painting in teals behind a couch, I mean, you can't go shopping for that. That's hard. That's difficult. And so I've found a way that the idea of what I had sort of built that confidence in me, and I'm like, I could do that, and it was just a matter of kind of going forward with that. But in terms of hustling, when you're getting to that idea, people have said that before, and I think what it is just not taking no unless somebody overtly says no. Then I'm like, okay, thank you very much. But
it's like not taking I don't think so.
Yeah.
Or like,
so then what do you think? And so learning to form questions and really listening to my clients, I think that's been a big thing. I mean, I work a lot in the way a designer would. Well, what do you want this to look like? What do you think this should look like? How should this feel? And once you're in your target market, I mean, in terms of them having enough like money to be able to afford your product, then you just work with them in terms of, as a human being who's related to you, I want something beautiful on my wall and in my life, and I want somebody providing high-end customer service and being there for me and doing what they say that they're going to do. I mean, that's been the biggest thing that Danielle Laporte talks about, and that's been the biggest lesson this year for me, is just do what you say you're going to do and show up in that way. And when it comes to the word hustling, I do take it as a compliment, because it's perseverance above all else, and just continuing to have a vision that's a bit higher than sort of the reality of your life. and how that may or may not look, and just kind of going beyond that and setting your sights on something. I look where the sky ends, Rihanna says that, and that to me is like the horizon. The sky doesn't end, right? That's a metaphor. It's like keep looking there, and I want to write rap songs too.
Yeah.
I've done the odd rap.
Well, then you'll be a hustler in a different way.
Yeah.
And I think it's also constant forward momentum, and that's maybe what sometimes people perceive as hustling, because they see you here and they see you here, and oh, you're speaking over here, oh, you're in the press over here. But I think maybe that's all it is. It's a constant sort of progression of moving forward towards something.
I think it's also what people see from the outside as hustling. It's really what you mentioned. Recently, I've been going through a lot of changes in my own business and in myself, and some major shifts, and I'm going to do something that's I'm going to continue in my career, but I want to develop a speaker series and do all sorts of other work in the world that I feel I'm really called to do. And while I'm going through these transitions, it's hilarious because I've gotten all this press, and from the outside it looks, and recently I've had people say, wow, you're just killing it, hey? And I'm like, really? Oh, I haven't gotten started. I feel like I'm dying inside. The reality of where you're at and how things are really happening in your world, and how things look, as a hustler outside can sometimes be false, or you said something about your bloopers versus your demo reel. Totally.
Absolutely. I mean,
everybody's seeing your
there's
demo
something
reel.
Also too with the outside looking in that people just assume that there's, you've reached a certain pinnacle or whatever, and now it's all glamour or whatever. But the reality is you're still a human. Yeah. And just because you reach, a summit, because that's what happens when you hustle. You start off at the base, you hustle your ass off, you reach a summit, but we're still human. We're still programmed for ever expanding and evolving and growing. And
it never really feels like a summit either. I've never gotten
for like outside perception of something. Outside perception, like, oh, you've made it or whatever. Especially for people that perhaps knew you then and now know you now and have seen, like you said, they've seen this forward progression, and now here you are, and there's this assumption that like now life is just you're Rihanna, it's just glamour. I want to go back to something that you said, Jenna, about believing in yourself, because I think I feel curious about this, and I want to explore it further, because isn't there a place where you believe in yourself but you're scared? Then there's a place, and jump in, I want your opinion on this. This is just a thought. And I'm definitely open to changing my mind. So there's this place where you believe in yourself, but you're scared. Then there's this place where you are done with the idea, or you're done with the model, or you're done with the whatever. You're just done with that thing. Yeah. Are these two different places?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And when you're believing, when you talk about like you just believe in yourself, and that's the sort of the fuel that will drive your ability to hustle and go out there and persevere and be tenacious and not take no, and keep pushing. How do you manage that sort of underlying fear, insecurity, worry, doubt?
By just doing more.
Okay.
I think it's being really clear on the bigger vision and then taking calculated steps on how to get there. And I find when you're in paralysis, that's when the fear is like all consuming, and you just feel like an anxious ball of nerves, basically. But as soon as you do something, as soon as you're a little proactive, and it doesn't have to be anything crazy, like even if you just, write one blog post, or approach one editor, or just, approach one store if you have product, it's amazing how those feelings start to subside. I think it's just when you're like dead in your tracks and you're like, holy shit, what do I do next? That it really causes a problem. And you can still feel the jittery energy when you're doing these steps forward, but I think it's a constant movement. It's sort of like being a fish. As soon as you stop swimming, you just sink to the bottom, and I think that's very much like being an entrepreneur too.
Just keep swimming.
Just keep swimming.
I think I'm going to write a song.
Yes.
A rap
we'll have a rap before the end of the hour.
So we can rap.
Coming up next, creative rapping.
Well, the question was
No, the question was really,
I was like, different direction.
it was just an exploration. I was just curious about, because there is a sense of believing, yes, you believe in, I think what you said about the bigger picture was really the key there.
Yeah.
Can you still believe in the bigger picture? And also then there's that moment where you do have a little bit of that fear and anxiety. Because I'm thinking of the audience perspective, thinking, okay, believe in myself and just go and make it happen.
Yeah.
But what about that part of me that doesn't believe fully?
Yeah.
So I think that what you said about the big picture and having the vision there and then taking action steps.
And it's also, why do you want to do it? And I think sometimes you can have this false belief like, oh, this will make me lots of money and get me to this certain level. But it's like, why are you feeling you need to do this? Is this something that was based on what you saw yourself doing 5 years ago? Has that shifted? So again, I know it sounds really simplistic, but it's a yes feeling and it's a no feeling.
Yeah.
It's also training, like your goal setting, what you're talking about. Recently, what's been difficult for me is I got to a certain place and I had no new goals. I hadn't set my goals, so I had this sense of insecurity around, well, what am I going to do now, or what does this even mean, or I've kind of arrived at this place and I didn't know, I hadn't been training myself to write really good goals for myself. And so I think that's a great place to start. Real things that you write down that are outside of you that you can achieve or not achieve and then cross them off. I still have a goal from my 2008 list on my 2012 list that I haven't achieved, and I'm still afraid to either cross it off and not do it fully, or just sort of let it go or achieve it, right? So sometimes they follow you from year to year.
Well, that's a really good point, because when you're setting goals and you meet all your goals, now what? And that's something that I think happened to me a couple years ago. I created this show that was sort of my big dream, and get more applications than we have room for, get all this press, almost get too many customers that we're not promoting quite as much, which sounds really weird, but we just physically can't fit that many customers in the venue anymore. But it's like, now what? And it took me a while to figure out, okay, well, I want to help people and I want to create this whole new dimension to my business. But there was a while where I was just I wasn't swimming forward, and it was cool in a sense, because I didn't have to worry about anything financially and my business was thriving. But I think as an entrepreneur, you just have that natural drive to always be moving forward. So then it's reassessing like what else I could do. And I think also when you're taking on something else, because there's so much we can do, like when you're an artsy, creative, entrepreneurial person, you could do this or you could do that or you could do that. But I think, again, it's sort of like a Venn diagram. You have to have some overlap. Otherwise, you're running a bakery and then
selling booty belts and doing a wrap.
Running make it, and it just doesn't make any sense, and you're going to burn yourself out. So I think moving forward and setting new goals, you want to constantly challenge yourself. But I think when you already draw on your natural skill set and what feels right, it just makes it a whole lot easier.
And learning how to outsource, like starting to really, like recently I worked with an assistant. It was such a great experience having that person in my studio, and also, just hiring. So that, you as an artistic creative person especially, or myself, like nobody else can really make my final painting. So how do you, like I got to a place where I had to start to figure out, how is this business model not going to just get more me, because that's going to, eventually paralyze me. So
it has
you
a
have
top.
to, how can you have, passive forms of income? How can you start to think outside of just you being the center of it all the time, right? Because that's exhausting. So
I want to go back to what you said about goal setting, because I think there's something very, very profound, also a self-discovery. Two things you said. One, reaching goals without having set new goals. Like a dark place. A dark place. A very dark place. Because we lose the momentum, like you're talking about. We lose the ability, the forward momentum thing, because it's like, oh shit, like, whoops, here I am. There's a second thing. I want to know your experience with this, which is that reaching any goal is never enough.
No fun.
It's never enough. And there's something that I didn't know about that before, because I came blazing out of the gates with these grandiose goals that, truthfully, in the place I was, did not fully believe I was going to reach them. So when I did, there was kind of this, and then I was also in the place where I hadn't set new ones. So a feeling of real stuckness. And sort of this heaviness, and then moving forward and setting new goals and reaching those, and then I had this realization that no matter what goal I reach, it's never enough.
It's almost like reading a book, and if you don't set goals, the next chapter is blank, and it's frustrating because there's no words on the page. So I think, you know, you constantly have to, we're sort of like the little hamster in the wheel. I mean, not to dumb it down too much, but like you constantly have to have something to strive for, because otherwise you're going to feel so lost. And I think a point you made before, like with sort of going online and people's best face forward, and it's almost like opening up a magazine and comparing yourself to the models in the magazine. Like, we don't do that. We know they're all airbrushed. But when you compare yourself to people's online persona, it's a lot of smoke and mirrors. And of course, they're going to look their most fabulous and have this amazing story written. And that's something that I learned as I've been going deeper into the online world. You have to be very careful, because if you're sitting on your couch working in your pajamas, which I usually do, my day-to-day life is wearing pajamas and sweatpants, and you're looking at these like glamorous women just killing it online, or what you think they're doing online. Sometimes it's not always, not to say it's not the truth, but it's a different sort of side of things. You don't see the other side.
It's one lens. It's
Absolutely.
one view. Yeah. And I mean, it's the view we have to put online, because it's put your best foot forward, and it's, you know, it's hustling and it's marketing and it's branding, but it's selective. Hustling, marketing, branding.
Now, kind of what I think when I go into that sort of negative mind frame, I sort of think like, what are people thinking of me when they go on my website? Maybe they think I have it all together, which obviously...
Of course we do, Jenna. Of course we do.
It's crazy. Like, when you actually think about what other people are seeing you as, it kind of puts into perspective what you're looking at other people and thinking, oh, wow, I shouldn't even start because this has been done already. Like, it's just crazy to think like that.
I think what you were getting at about never being fulfilled in terms of reaching goals, and is, for me, it's been having to work on my spiritual life. That is the only answer for me. There's no, otherwise it's an endless ether of, endless hamster wheels, and that's just not, we only have one life. Even if we have multiple lives, this is the only one we get to do this way, this time. And so I'm really, really spending a lot of time getting real with myself. And I think being an entrepreneur shows you that. It teaches you that, wow, I was in Martha Stewart magazine and that didn't feel good. That didn't feel like anything. And it doesn't matter how it was perceived from the outside. There's a human being on the other side of that has to live with that. And I think we have to get really honest too, spiritually with ourselves in that journey, but also with the state of the world right now, and ways that we have to give back. And I think that these feelings are coming up because we're called to sort of contribute in a much larger way. And so I think as adult entrepreneurs, as adult women entrepreneurs, as women who are going to move, in this direction, we're going to have to get really serious with ourselves as to how we want to take this forward in a really mature way that gives back. Because we're going to raise the children, and we're going to do all these things that are going to shape the next generation, and so
yeah, figuratively, and practically.
Yeah,
we really are the mothers.
Practical way.
Yeah, in a very practical way. And you're right in that is really where I was going. And you talk about the yes feeling and the no feeling, and there is a concept out there that there's two real emotions, genuine emotions, one being fear and the other being love. And when we're coming from love, it doesn't mean that life stops happening. It doesn't mean that it's Pollyanna and everything is rosy and sparkly and nothing bad happens. It means that you have cultivated that place within yourself where there's a deeper knowing that knows that no accomplishment is ever going to be the thing. No outside accomplishment is ever going to be the thing. And that's not to say don't work to accomplish outside things. It's to say, go deeper with the experience of what it means to be a human, and what we're talking about. Entrepreneurship seems to be another depth to the calling. Once you enter it and you start discovering these things in a very real way, you take full responsibility, or that's definitely the calling, to take full responsibility for your life, and because we've agreed to take full responsibility for our livelihood through entrepreneurship, then these other deeper things seem to surface more quickly and give us an opportunity to grow in depths that we weren't necessarily knowing that we're there. We've got a question from the audience. Sue was asking, Jenna, what was the marketing course? I think she's asking about Make It University.
Oh.
Talk a little bit about that.
I have been doing various workshops and seminars throughout probably the past 5 years because I always felt a need to give back, and because of my experience and dealing with so many artisans and creative people through the Make It show, I just would do coaching and have various seminars. But recently I put everything online, so now anyone across the world can access my programs. So I have an entrepreneur success kit, which includes branding and pricing and wholesaling and production. And then I also work with Etsy. So I was sent down to Etsy a couple months ago to become an Etsy educator, which was really exciting. So I've developed an Etsy course that also can be downloaded anywhere. And my courses are made up of videos and worksheets. So it's just a really cool way for people to learn. And and I think it's so great when creative people are able to embrace the business side, because as I'm sure Zoe can attest, you need to have the other side of things, and it doesn't matter how amazing you are at creating product, and you can be the most gifted artist, but until you understand sort of the marketing side of things, it's really difficult to get the word out of how fabulous you really are. So I guess for more information, check out makeituniversity.com, and all my courses are online.
Yeah, very, very cool. And again, there's this cool new transparency and drive to educate and to share. You know, there seemed to, it was, I think, before my time where there was this sort of hold everything really close to your chest and don't share anything. And now,
that's really changed a lot.
Thankfully, we're in this new world, which is like the more transparent we are, the more we can learn and grow together. Synergy, I know, is a far overused word nowadays, but it really is this concept that like we can, you know, sitting here amongst the three of us having this conversation is an energetic force that is greater than the three of our individual parts, and that's like mind-blowing.
So
really
amazing.
amazing.
It's such an exciting generation to be part of.
And I think the sharing aspect is so cool. And now we're so linked up. You just go online and you can connect with thousands, if not millions of people doing exactly what you're doing, but have a different way of approaching it. And you just learn so much that way. So I think being open, it's the only way to go. And as soon as you get your competitive helmet on and you know you're ready to battle other people doing similar things, you're just gonna lose. Like, it just doesn't work that way.
No, totally. Best piece of advice for creative entrepreneurs?
You can actually make money doing it.
Yes.
But I think
and just rewind the following hour if you want to hear more about how to do that.
I think it's such a mindset, and I think it's something that we're taught even as children in the school system. Like, oh, art's fun. It's kind of a hobby you can do, and you do your art class. But I think a lot of times we're taught from such a young age, but it's not something you do as a career. You'll just struggle, and you'll be starving, and maybe homeless, and even worse, and then you'll be on drugs, and then your whole life is over. But you know, you can really be successful as an artist. But my caveat, you have to be business savvy, and it doesn't have to be this like douchey, yucky, like cutthroat, competitive type of business like we were referring to before. Like, it doesn't have to be so competitive, but you do have to understand marketing, and you have to understand your customer and your brand and how that all weaves together, because without that piece, it will be really hard and you probably will starve.
Or you have to have other professionals like galleries or representatives that are working to do that part of it for you if you are paralyzed in that way. That, like, if you're, you know,
outsource, collaborate,
to market to them. I think there's some savviness that comes from being able to showcase your work in a really advantageous way.
That's true. Yeah, absolutely. Best advice to creative people recently, I think it's staying true to yourself. You have to. If I had done that earlier, every step of the way, I'd be light years ahead of where I am right now.
I recently watched an interview between Marianne Williamson and Oprah, and Marianne was saying, you know, it's really up to us whether we want to learn through joy or through pain.
Yes.
And I've done a lot of my learning through pain. I'm excited at the idea, at the concept that I can learn through joy, and I think that really is exactly where it begins. It begins by staying true to that inner world and to knowing and honing that voice of your inner intuition and that cultivation of that relationship.
And it's more fun.
Yes!
It's a heck of a lot more fun. And I think Also, another little nugget of advice, if it doesn't feel fun, something's wrong. Like, that doesn't mean that every day is going to be a cakewalk, but if it feels kind of miserable for months on end, something's wrong. And go back to the drawing board and think again, like, why are you doing this? Because there's probably something a little off course.
Yeah. Yes, it can be fun. We can make lots of money. Yay! Thank you both so much for being here. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you next time.